And we are live. Welcome to Homemaking with Purpose, where we bring to you the best ideas, interviews, and information for today's homemaker. I am Denise Jordan, your host, and on tonight's show, we welcome Anitra Green. And Anitra is a licensed social worker and grief counselor who will give us some strategies for coping with stress and grief that can accompany the holidays, particularly if you've lost someone recently. But before I bring her on, let me say that this video is brought to you by Apron Diva, our online apron boutique. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. And the featured apron for tonight is this one. We call it Autumn. And it is a pretty little apron that says pumpkin spice and everything nice. The adjustable neck strap and waist ties make it one size fits most. Pick one up for yourself or as a gift for someone you love. Order now to make sure you get it in time for the holiday. And this week only, you can get it at 10% off using the code AUTUMN10. So let me share that with you real quick. The discount code is AUTUMN10. Put the code in at checkout, and that will allow you to get access to that code. Okay, let's get into it. I see lots of people have jumped on already. I've gotten lots of comments and notes that people are really looking forward to this session. So I am going to say hello, homemakers, and everyone in the chat. I am so glad you could join us tonight, especially since it's not our usual nights. I so appreciate that you guys were able to make the jump from Thursday to Wednesday for us tonight. We'll be back on Thursday next week. But thank you so much for working with this change. And I can see we've got people jumping in from California, from Cleveland, Ohio, and so many other places. So, okay, let's go ahead and we will bring Miss Green on. Hello, Anitra. Thank you so
Hello.
much for joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be here. Hello. Thank you, everyone. I see the comments coming in. Hello, everyone. And thank you for the warm welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, I have to tell you, people have really been saying how important this topic is, and they're really glad that you're going to be here. And really, Anitra, yours is really an important topic, whereas for many, holiday time is full of fun and family gatherings and the pitter patter of little feet and all that good stuff filled with joy. But for others, it can be very stressful. And even when you're having all of that fun stuff, that can be stressful as well. So if you're looking at an empty seat at the table, this could be a very stressful holiday. So really, I want to thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
All right. So before I get started, guys, you guys know how I can be. I am going to try not to interrupt Anitra too much. I'm going to try to let her do her thing. But as you know, I sometimes get a little bit excited and some of my words will just tumble out. So I'm going to try to jot down my questions and ask them at strategic periods. Viewers, remember if you have a question, put four question marks in front of it and four question marks behind it. That way I'll see it. And then Mickey Blue Skies is on and she will help me capture the question. So Anitra, before we get started with the Q&A, can you tell us a little bit about your homemaking journey?
Sure. So I am newly married. So well, I can say no. Still feels new. It's 4 years, but I still feel like I'm in the toddler phase of marriage, as I always laugh and say. So I am, and I actually, interestingly, I just became a new homeowner. So I just transitioned my life to a new home. So this is an interesting time for me of building, transitioning, and it's exciting. Moving is stressful, but I think that I'm over the stressful part, and I'm kind of getting into the decorating time of home ownership. So that's very exciting. I live in Delaware with my husband, who is a teacher. He teaches kindergarten, so I always tell him that he's a bold and a brave man. And I have a
Yes.
12-year-old daughter. Yeah, kindergarten is not a joke. And I have a 12-year-old daughter named Amari, and she is a seventh grader. And I have my pet. And I work from home now. So this is another big shift for me. I used to come from working inside of a school for 13 years. So I'm now home every day. I work from home. So I spend a lot of time in my house, more than I've ever spent.
Okay, well, great. Well, since you were talking about that you're working from home now, can you just tell us real briefly about your practice?
Sure. So my practice is tailor-made behavioral health solutions. And my practice is actually named after me. I always say Taylor is my maiden name. And so counseling is personal. So I definitely wanted to have my name in the practice. And I treat anxiety, depression, grief and loss is my specialization. I also work with those who are making transitions in life, and I also help with stress management. In addition, I do training. So I'm just unveiling the training portion of my business. I just did my first training this past Friday, specifically for grief and loss. So if you are an organization or it could be a church, a business, a therapist, anyone who works with grieving people, I have developed the training to help better support. And I have been a business owner since March of this year, and I decided to become a private practice therapist because of the pandemic. It really was my push to move forward. I always had a vision and a dream to do it, and I felt this was the time because mental health needs are at an all-time high, especially because of the pandemic.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think that definitely establishes your bona fides. I mean, we can tell you have certainly paid your dues in working in um, clinical practice, and now you're in private practice. So we're glad to have you there. So let me just go ahead and say that, I really look forward to the holidays. I tell you what, come November 1st, I start thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas. I start planning my dinner, thinking about what I need to do. So I just love the hustle and bustle, but it can be stressful. Do you have any suggestions on what we can do to manage the stress?
Yes. So I'm a statistics person. So of course, when you and I talked about this segment, I actually wanted to see what was the statistics on stress for the holidays, just out of curiosity, because I think numbers are powerful and they paint a really good picture. And so according to this 2020 statistics from last holiday, it said that 69% of people were stressed due to a lack of time.
Mhm.
Another 51% of people were stressed due to pressure to get gifts and purchase gifts for other people.
Mhm.
So it looks like time and money are the primary stressors. And in my own world, I see it. I think that between the cooking and the cleaning and the preparation for family, and then there is, that person that you're on Christmas Eve and you're like, oh my goodness, it's midnight and I forgot to get this person a gift, right? And it becomes overwhelming.
Mhm.
So a few tips, and I jotted down some notes because I want to stick to the point. One is I thought to be realistic about what the holidays are and what the focus of the holidays is. It really is time to spend time with your loved ones and to really gather, whether it's Thanksgiving to be thankful, or for Christmas for those who are Christians, celebrating the birth of Christ, and for those who are not, celebrating whatever it is that their meaning of Christmas is. But we spend in this, it's the focus is about the people. So one thing that I would say is to not overcommit, specifically when it comes to the time, being stressed about time. It's okay to say no. You're not going to be able to make everything that you're invited to. I think being creative and participating in things virtually. So, of course, because of the pandemic, many of us know what it's like to jump on a Zoom. Sometimes instead of traveling and trying to go here, there, and everywhere, we might have to tap into technology to gather with our loved ones. It's okay to not go to every single event that you're invited to. And like I said, being realistic about what it is that you can and cannot do. And it's okay to say no. One of my favorite sayings is that part of self-care is saying no. So you do have to be able to say, I'm sorry, there's 1,000 ways to say no. I would love to come, but I have something, a conflict, an event. But thank you so much for the invitation. Also, sticking to a budget. Once you set a budget for the holidays, you have to stick to it. And you may be able to be creative. You can make homemade gifts. I know a lot of people will say, I saved a lot of money. They bake cakes. If you have a creative hand and you know how to make wreaths, you might want to use your creativity and put those skill sets that you have to work so that you can save money and not stress yourself out. If you have a big family, You may decide that instead of trying to buy for your 17 nieces and nephews, that you're going to do a Pollyanna. I'm hearing a lot of families say, you know what, we're going to pick a name because as our family is growing, that means that you have to spend more money. And so you have to be creative. Another thing that you can do is really just have conversations and as a family, and maybe this isn't the year that you're going to give people who already have a lot more gifts. Maybe this is a year that your family can come together to adopt a family in a shelter. I know that that is something that I'm going to be talking to my family about. Hey, you know what? Our children have a lot. Let's make this a time where we can sow into other people and give something to someone. It means so much more when you give to people who don't expect it versus you gave me something, I'm going to give you something, right? So it might be the year to shift and donate and give. So those are just a few tips in terms of time and money that I think could help people to stress less, because again, it's not about all of that. It really is about enjoying it and creating memories.
Okay. One of the things that I popped up here on the screen is that no is a complete sentence. And a funny thing, I was listening to another video earlier today, and she was sharing that same message, is to learn to say no. And when you said no, but thank you very much for the invitation, I thought that is perfect. Or, you know what, I'm sorry, but I have another commitment, and you don't have to share what that is. And then I saw Nefertiri said she saw her niece have an emotional breakdown the first year. Her family didn't have a big gathering in her 20s, and that was going. And so she's been trying to desensitize some of the hoopla of the holidays in her home. And let me just share. Last Christmas, I was a mess. I will admit it. I was a total mess last Christmas. My daughter lives in Tennessee, and her family are usually here every Christmas. They weren't able to come. My son lives in Georgia. Him and his family, it was their year to come for Christmas, and they weren't ever able to come because of the pandemic. My sister and her family, who lives right here in town, her daughter and their grandchildren will usually come over. They came over. They, weren't able to come. And so we did a Zoom call on Christmas Eve where my husband always does some kind of crafts with the children. So my daughter arranged a Zoom call so that all the grandkids in the different areas could get on a Zoom, and they did their craft with granddaddy. And I watched everything, and I was smiling and happy. And then I was talking to my son, and I said, well, okay, son, I'll see you later. I got to go. And I broke down into tears. I literally sobbed for 30 minutes. My husband was just like, he didn't know what to say or what to do. And then the next day, my niece came over to pick up their gifts. They weren't going to stay. And I'm like, you're not going to stay? And I just broke down sobbing again. And I know my niece has never seen me cry. She's like, oh, Aunt Denise. She was just shocked. I was a total mess. And I was like, I'm not going to have anybody. And I mean, literally, I was sobbing. You have to ask Mick. I was a mess. So what practical advice can you offer when our holidays may not look like it normally does, how we can manage and not be such a mess? And ladies and gents out there, Miss Denise does not always have it together, as I just shared.
Well, one, I want to start with, I'm sorry for your loss. And it's many of us, many people viewing like the holidays are definitely a time where it is a huge trigger. Just like the birth dates, the death dates, the holidays is a time that we notice the missing seat, the missing person at the table. And there is the empty seat. And there's a poem called The Empty Seat at the Table. And it's beautiful. And it's about grief, particularly during the holidays. The first thing that I tell people is to expect that you're going to feel the loss. Prepare for it. Understand that at some point it might not be on the holiday, it might be 2 days before, but literally it's like your body and your mind begin to go into, wow, here comes the holidays. Here comes, whatever traditions have become, you're living in a new normal. So the first thing I say is to expect that you're going to feel something during the holidays.
Okay.
And embrace it. Because a lot of times people don't want to deal with grief, right? We think that if we don't talk about it or if we push through it, it's going to disappear. And the reality is that when we say, okay, you know what, the holidays are going to be tough, I know I'm going to feel it. let me be prepared for it. I think that planning ahead and understanding that you're going to feel emotional, and then what are you going to do? Like, what is the plan for the holidays with the new person? If you just lost your matriarch and she always made the turkey and nobody ever made the turkey, who's going to make the turkey this year? Are you even going to gather the way that you used to, or are you going to go away for the holidays? There are people who decide that they want to create a new tradition because their norm has changed. So literally, I've known families that say, you know what, instead of doing our traditional, Christmas, we travel now. We don't exchange gifts. It's hard for my family. So now we take a little mini getaway and we spend our money on vacation. We don't celebrate that way. So it's a good time to consider creating a new tradition, because for sure, that something has shifted in your family. Mm-hmm. Or perhaps if everybody met at the matriarch's house, where are you going to meet now? Are you still, if, let's say that, another parent is living, are you still going to go to the house where the deceased person was at? Or are you going to shift it to a new person? Those are conversations that really have to happen in advance, so that the day before Thanksgiving, it's not like, oh, we didn't talk about this. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. So I do think that you need to think about it and plan. I always say create an escape plan. That means that if you do go out for the holidays and you know that you're grieving, give yourself an opportunity to be able to go when you need to. So if you rode with someone, it might be a good thing to tell them and be honest and say, hey, you know what? The holidays are tough. So, I might go for 30 minutes, but I might need to go. I tell people maybe you should drive yourself, because you want to be able to leave. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, then you know that at this point, it's a good time for you to exit. You don't want to stay the entire time. Have an exit, create an escape plan. That's what I call it, an escape plan.
I like that idea. That's a great idea, to create an escape plan. And that's not something that I would have thought about. But you're right, that is something to consider doing. And just kind of looking over in the chat, I can see so many people have lost someone. And as you know, like me and Blue Skies, we lost our mom. And my sister Tina is on. We lost our mom last year. So she says that holidays just aren't the same anymore without both of our parents. And so some people don't even want to think about them. But like you said, you have to plan ahead and possibly create a new tradition.
Yes, create a new tradition. The other thing is, and I'm going to share a brief story about something that happened to me this weekend. It's important for us to let other people know where we are at and what we need. Halloween was my grandmother's birthday. And that holiday, even though we don't celebrate it, it was always about her on that day. Her ongoing joke was, I always thought Halloween, everybody was celebrating my birthday. And so Sunday, I was actually out with a friend, bridal shower shopping. And I knew that Halloween was going to be tough, but I also felt like I had the energy to go out and I didn't want to miss the event. But I wasn't really myself. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm talkative, and I was a little quiet. And my friends were like, what's up with you today? And I'm like, well, today is my grandmother's birthday and this is a hard day for me. Mm-hmm. I think this is probably the first time that I've been that forthcoming about, being vulnerable. Sometimes we don't want to tell people we're having a tough time because we're like, I don't want to rain on our parade. And it was hard because I'm like, do I tell my girlfriend? And I waited until we were done and she found her dress and, we went through this whole thing. And then when we went out to eat, I finally opened up and said, today was hard. I had moments. I was very happy looking at you, but I could just feel my countenance because this year was tough. I'm in a new home. I'm hosting Thanksgiving. My grandmother would have been here. And so I talked maybe for 10 minutes. And sometimes we have to let people know that we're having a hard time. So if someone asks you, are you okay? And people are asking, it's not the time to say, yeah, I'm fine. Because we do that. We don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. We don't want to open up. But the reality is, when I shared that, I had a chance for my friends to support me. So we have to be willing to let people know it's okay to say, you know what, this Christmas I am struggling. And so I'm probably not going to come to an event. Or if someone says, hey, how are you doing? I know this is your first or your second or your third Christmas without your dad or your mom. How are you? Tell them the truth. And it's hard, but you'll be surprised with talking to somebody for 5 or 10 minutes does for your mood, just to have someone listen to you and acknowledge that it's hard. So we have to do that. Be open and honest and reduce unnecessary stress. Grief is already exhausting. It's exhausting. It tires your body out. It's like an extended stress response. And so reducing your stress actually helps you not feel to the point where your body is just in overload. So back to the holiday stuff, it might not be the time. It might be the time to order online and not go out to the malls because you just don't have the energy.
Mhm.
It might be the time to not go to all 6 of your grandchildren's holiday celebration at school because you just don't have the energy. That might be the time for the parents to turn the camera around and show you what's happening and say, oh, that was wonderful, right? So being creative, because it is important for you to listen to your body. Sometimes we push ourselves beyond the limit, and you do. Grief takes a toll on your body. So you do have to figure out how to rest, how to take breaks, and just, how to listen to your body.
Oh, now that is huge. When you say how to listen to your body, I'm going to just pop up a few uh, comments from the chat, and then I'll let you go ahead and continue with your thoughts. But this one from Mary's Nest says, Mary says, Anitra, that really hit me. Her dad used to always make the stuffing, and it was so hard for her the first year that he was gone. Let's see. Um, we had so many good ones, and now I'm going past them. Let's see. People are. So Mary says they'll be looking at 2 empty seats this year, so that's going to be hard. Um, let's see. Don't overcommit. People are saying they agree with that the comment you made there. Nefertiri says that, and then Nefertiri says that she saw her niece have an emotional breakdown. So, it can be very, very difficult. And then I'm not sure what a Pollyanna is. If you could explain that, and then we'll let you get back to your comments.
Sure. So a Pollyanna is just when you kind of put a name, everybody takes a name, they write down, well, traditionally people might write down 3 things that they want for the holidays, and you put it in a hat. And so if 20 people participate, you take a name out, and that is the person that you do a gift exchange with. So instead of buying for every single person in your family, everybody picks a person.
Mm-hmm.
Some people find that to be creative because, again, if you have a huge family and there are 16 nieces and nephews and you have a big family, it makes it simpler. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts down on the expense, and it also gives people a chance to be surprised, on who you pick. So that is something that people do. I see somebody said, Mickey said, Pollyanna's never worked in our family. We would have one set, but everyone would still wind up buying something for everyone. And again, I think that sometimes people feel obligated, and unfortunately, people go into spending, their savings, depleting their savings. And then when people say January shows up and it's one of the most depressing months because people have overspent. And then but the bill collectors don't acknowledge Christmas. They're not going to say, right, oh, you spent your rent money on the holidays. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Merry Christmas. We're going to waive your rent. It doesn't work like that. So you have to have a budget because overspending really does stress people out, and finances are really a big thing. And thinking about COVID and all the ways that people, and not to, and not to have expectations that you're going to get something. And again, adopting a family and saying our kids have a lot. If you're fortunate and blessed to have a lot, it is very nice to adopt a family and just say, hey, you know what? Let's put all of our resources together and adopt a family.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go ahead with your comments then.
Yeah. So back to the grief. I also want to say, a lot of times people think that there's a time limit on grief. So there are people who are watching this who may have lost someone 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago. People have this idea in their mind that, oh, you're still in that space, right? Well, didn't such and such pass away? It's been 4 years now, 5 years now. People like to rush us through our grief journeys. And I always tell people grief is forever, right? The intensity of grief changes, but you are going to always love the person that you lost. So there is not an end to it. It just feels different. The intensity changes. My grandmother passed 20 something years ago. And on Halloween, I was feeling it. I had a crying spell. I came home. I really didn't want to talk. I was upset that she wasn't here. I'm hosting Thanksgiving for the first time in my life. And she's not here. Are you serious? And it's hard. I'm also married to, my husband has grandparents who are 88 and 90, and my grandmother would be about 87. So I also felt blessed. On one hand, I'm like, okay, well, I do have grandparents now through marriage, but it's like, nature, just be honest. They're not your grandma, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to take away. So then I just said, it's okay to grieve. I don't want to judge myself. Sometimes people will say, well, at least you got this, or well, look at it on this side. And it's like, no, I miss my loved one and it's okay. So don't judge yourself. It's okay if you have a great Christmas Eve. Some people will say, I had a great Christmas Eve, right? And I was all in the spirit and, singing and making my favorite stuff. And then Christmas Day, I woke up and couldn't get out of bed. And I tell people, this is what grief looks like.
Okay.
It is a roller coaster ride. It's not a straight line. It's not a time limit. So just understand it. And I think it's important because there are people who may have been managing fine, and then the holidays come and they feel like they're right back to the beginning and they think they're regressing. And I always say, no, that's what it looks like. You're back to shock. You're back to, I can't believe this happened. You're back to, this isn't fair. You're back to, why did this happen? How come, why did this happen? So it's very normal. And the holidays does bring that out, especially when, as somebody said, their father used to do the stuff and every little thing, the Christmas music, the trees, whatever meal they cooked. It's all triggering, and you never know how you're going to respond. So that goes back to my exit plan, escape plan, making sure that you set yourself up to be able to move on your own time. You don't have to ask somebody, especially I'm assuming, I don't want to assume everyone's driving, but whether it's calling Uber, whatever, just understand that when you feel like you need a break, you might not be able to stay till 11 o'clock at night. At 7 o'clock, you might say, you know what, I did a little bit, but now I just want to go home and kind of have my moment. And that's okay.
Okay. There's a question up here from Ronnie Weaver. She says, how do you say no to gift giving?
So an example might be, I'm just using this as an example for myself if I'm not going to give gifts to my family. An example might be that I might say to my family, this year my husband and I decided that instead of giving out gifts to our family, who for the most part have so much, we are going to adopt a family for the holidays, and we're going to give to people who are displaced and may not get anything for Christmas if the love of strangers do not happen. That's it. I don't think any more explanation. I don't think that you have to justify it. And some people might be able to say, listen, I lost my job 3 months ago. I'm not going to be able to give, but I don't think that you have to go into your personal business just to say, for personal reasons, we're not going to do a traditional Christmas. For some people, it's we're traveling. For some people, it's we're doing something different. And believe it or not, I think that when you say that to people, especially for the people that are stressed out, they might be like, well, what are you doing? This sounds good. I might need to do this because, right. And for children, I mean, obviously, I've always told my daughter that Christmas was about giving, not getting. And I trained her from a little girl. So she always thought that Christmas was more about doing for other people. I'm glad I talked to a wise person who said, don't set your children up to have unrealistic expectations, because Christmas is not just about right, unrealistic expectations. So I always told my daughter, I said, you get to pick 1 or 2 things, but we're going to pick out like 4 or 5 things for other people. So because she's older, she doesn't expect much, right? Because I give to her all year, and I say, again, I'm a Christian, so I say, we're celebrating Christ. My family celebration has to do with Christ. So yes, we do exchange gifts. He was a gift to the world, right? So we've been talking about that since she's been a child. So she doesn't have that. So for people with the bratty children, and they're like, their list is $5,000, we have to be honest with our kids. Teach them about money. Explain to them that's not going to happen, but here is what I can do. And I don't know what that looks like for different households, but I started with mine from very little, because a lot of the pressure does come from trying to outdo the last Christmas. And at some point, it just gets to be too much.
Okay. We got another comment here from Gail Luker. She says that, thank you. She really feels that way. She was wondering if it was okay to still grieve. She lost her sister 1 year after her mother. So in its year 13 and 20. So I guess in 2013 for the mother and 2014 for the sister. And she's still grieving and feeling the loss. So your comments were very helpful to her. So there's that. Fly Lady Cat is on. And hey, Cat, so good you could join us. She says her mama passed away in February. So it's really fresh there for her.
And I'm so sorry for all the losses. This has been an extraordinary time of grief. And again, with the pandemic, it has taken grief to another level.
Mm-hmm.
And when people have multiple losses, I always refer to it as complex grief or bereavement overload, which is just when you've had so many losses that your brain literally doesn't know, it's hard to know which tears, where one grief journey starts and the other ends, because it just becomes, you become overloaded. And at some point, it just becomes too much. So, sometimes people feel like, where do I even start? And I'm just like, just one moment at a time, then 1 minute at a time, then 1 hour at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to 1 day at a time. It's a process. My dad passed 21 years ago, the week of Thanksgiving, and it's still a hard holiday for me. Yes. And I'm so glad the reason that I highlight that there's not a time limit on grief, because I do think that what happens is people see you functioning. They see you back to work. They see you smile. They see your face washed and your hair combed. That's what I used to say after my dad died. You go back to work and all of a sudden your world is so different. And you have to, at some point, reintegrate into the world, but your world looks different, but people can't see it. And so people do think that, oh, I just saw you smiling and dancing, and they see you doing things. And so people think that you're better, like that, like it's secure. Like, okay, it's been a year. And some people have this thing in their head that after the first year, everything gets better. And it really is, as I said, it's a lifetime experience. I just think that as time passes, the intensity of the grief changes. I used to not be able to look at a picture of my grandmother for the first 2 years. Now I want to see her picture. I used to not want to dream about her. And I want to see my dad in my sleep because I miss seeing his face. But in the beginning, I couldn't look at a picture. So as time passes, you are able to do different things. I've even heard of a friend of mine who's in the grief world. She sets an empty seat for her son who's gone. She leaves an empty setting at her table. And for some people, it was a little much, but she said that is how I want to honor my son. So I'm going to keep the placement there and I'm going to honor him. I want to take a moment I think she puts a poem on the plate. And for her, so whatever way you want to celebrate your loved one and creating it, maybe you want to burn a candle, maybe you want to get a Christmas bulb with their picture on it. Maybe you want to, some people go to the cemetery and decorate the graves. Other people, like me, don't really go to the cemetery because it really doesn't bring me comfort. It makes me more distressing. So the other thing I want to say is that you really have to do things that work for you. If you're not a person who is comforted from going to the cemetery, don't go because you see other people on social media saying, it's Christmas, I'm putting flowers on my mother's grave and decorating it with holiday lights, right? And people do that. I've seen people try to do that and it was distressing and it set them back. And you have to know if that's for you. Everything doesn't work for everybody.
No.
And all of our grief journeys is very individual. I love the saying that says grief is individual as our fingerprints. Mm-hmm. When my grandmother was living, she went to her mother's cemetery every holiday. I did it once for her and I felt like I was going to faint. It was too much. I've never been back since. I get other family members. We check on her headstone. I am not a cemetery person and I know that and I don't feel guilty. So we can't,
it's a little much.
They do this for their loved ones. So if I don't do this, right, if it works for you, then do it. If it doesn't, then don't. It's just as simple as that, because I've seen people stress themselves out trying to, keep up traditions that just don't work for them.
I have to agree with that. I'm not one that likes going to the cemetery either, but I did start that when my dad died because my mom would want us to take her. So I would go to take her. And I did find some comfort, a little more than I thought I would, but it's not something that I particularly would rather do. So Nefertiti says her dad passed away in 2013, and some days she grieves with memories, some days with laughter, but every day she grieves the loss. And I like that thought that some days you get to a point that you can think back and remember the good times and laugh and smile so that it's not always tears. It's still part of grieving, but not always tears. And then you mentioned that it's okay to grieve in your own personal way so that it's comfortable for you. And Kat says grieving is so personal and looks different for each person. So I think I'm going to take this time right now to give away our apron note. And this is your first time with us, so you don't know what an apron note is. But an apron note is something that we put in with every order. This is an apron note. And we say you don't choose the note chooses you. We have 14 different notes, and we put one note in randomly with each order. And then we're hoping that you would think of the note as a something from your dearest friend. And the note for today says, you have permission, whoops, you have permission to take care of yourself. You have permission to take care of yourself. So Mickey Blue Skies is going to randomly choose a viewer to receive this week's apron note. But while they're typing in the chat what this note means to them, Anitra, could you tell what this note means to you?
Sure. So one of my favorite slogans, and I saw it somewhere, is that it's okay to put yourself at the top of your to-do list. For
Oh,
me, what this means is that self-care is not selfish, it is very necessary. And I'm big on self-care. I think that it's important that some type of way you prioritize your mental health, your health. I know people always use the example on an airplane and tell you to put your oxygen on first and then help the person next to you. And so I would just say that self-care is not selfish. And I am big on self-care. The work that I do is demanding, it's emotionally demanding. So I plan things for myself and I plan them often. And I do take time for myself. And I think that it's especially hard to do for women. I just think that, my grandmother used to always say, a woman's work is never done. And I used to say, but why? How come a man's work is done? I don't understand this. I don't like this. So I build it into my routines. And I just think that self-care is not selfish.
okay. And on top of that, self care, there's a comment from Blue Skies about grief counseling, and how important that can be to help people heal. Can you talk about that a little bit while we're waiting for people to type in the chat?
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely was not going to forget that. As a therapist, that is one of my favorite topics is therapy works. And so grief counseling is, I actually suggest that anyone who is on a grief journey get counseling. And the reason that I say that is because out of all of the challenges that we go through in life, grief is by far to me the most challenging
Hmm.
because it's the most permanent. And the permanency of grief is devastating to know that a person that you love and care for is never, you're never going to see them again in this life is devastating. And it is traumatic from the time you get the call and your whole life shifts in an instant. And it's very hard to deal with in isolation. A lot of people struggle, suffer in silence, and grief counseling is effective. And I can say it because not only have do I do it from the professional side, but I've had it, I've received it. I've
Hmm.
lost many people in my personal journey. And it's not necessarily the thing that led me to become a grief counselor because at the time I went through all my losses, I knew I wanted to work with children and grief was not the area. But as life kind of I moved through life, it's something that occurred and it was a natural process. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about how I got into grief, but I will tell you that it's helpful to talk to a non-judgmental person who's going to be able to help you come up with strategies, coping skills, allow you to talk specifically because in our society, we don't talk about death and not a lot of people can hold a space for that. I don't know when's the last time you got a chance to sit down and talk to someone for an hour or 45 minutes about how you feel about the loss you experienced.
Hmm.
A lot of people are going to become overwhelmed. They're going to start saying things to you like, well, just pray about it and it'll get better. Like death happens, God needed an angel. And people will say all kinds of things because it's uncomfortable and or they don't know what to say to you.
Hmm.
So I just think that counseling between the tools that you get, the strategies, the ability to process your stuff, and like I said, in a non-judgmental manner, in a confidential manner, it is highly effective. And so I suggest it. I also suggest all kinds of resources and reading about grief. I just think that the more that you know about it, the more you realize that your process is normal. And it is, it's not always easy. It's the toughest journey, right?
Yeah.
I look at it as permanent separation anxiety. People talk about separation anxiety for babies. And I'm like, well, separation anxiety, you're separated from someone and it causes anxiety and you're separated from them for the rest of your life. And every day you have to wake up and figure out how to operate without them. That's a lot. It's a lot. And so I highly suggest it. I
Okay.
highly suggest it.
Couple people are talking about the apron note, and the winner of the apron note is Gail Luker. So Gail, if you would email me your mailing address, don't put it in the chat, but email me your mailing address at this and that with Denise at gmail.com. I will mail that out to you. And then Anitra, if you could email me your mailing address, I will send you your apron note as well. And then I got a note that we needed to, let me find it. Oh, blue skies, I just lost it. Let's see. Melinda Plain and Simple says, do you work with children experiencing grief?
I do. I have for the last 13 years. I've worked with children, and I'm glad that you mentioned children because sometimes their grief looks different, but
Oh,
they do grieve. And so a lot of times when there's a loss, I always tell people to make sure that you let your school counselor know. Make sure that you let their teachers know because grief affects your brain. And so their ability to concentrate is affected. It might be the time where the teachers ease up on the homework. And sometimes people think because children are young, they don't really know what's happening. Kindergarten or first graders, they end up in a nurse's office with stomach aches. They end up in a nurse's office with headaches. And talk to your children about grief and death in terms that they understand. Kids are very literal. So I always tell people, use words that they understand instead of saying they passed away. If you're talking to a little person, you might say, pop, pop, spotty, stop working. All living things die, plants die, people die. You have to be very basic with the younger kids, teenagers, preteens, that kind of like third grade and up. They understand exactly what you're saying. And so they may be quieter, they may cry, they may not want to go to school.
mm-hmm.
A lot comes up with children. I do recommend grief counseling for them, and particularly making sure that their school knows. I think it's important. When I spent 13 years in school, I would always appreciate when families would call me and say, "Hey, we had a loss. I just wanted my child to check in with you." If they don't need counseling, it's fine. But I do know that this is affecting them, and I don't want their grades to drop or whatever. But it does affect children, and so sometimes people don't realize just how much.
I think that's an important comment to realize that children do suffer grief and they experience it differently. I know one of my little nieces, after my mom died, would have, well, she would wake up in the middle of the night crying because she missed Granny. And then I have another relative who died. So she experienced two losses in less than a year of like grandparent like figures. And then we have another relative who is ill. And so she's 5, but she would wake up in the middle of the night crying because she was thinking about the people that she lost. So, yes, children do experience that. And then Tina Robbins is commenting on the apron note, and it means that I'm the person who needs to be cared for, not my family at the moment. Taking care of my family is what I do. So deciding to only take care of me is fine. And there's a question there. So is that fine for her to decide to only take care of herself?
It sure, it sure is. I mean, I think that people think taking care of my family is what I do, so deciding to only take care of me is fine. Yeah, I think that it's okay to not neglect yourself. I think that people think that, I don't have time to take a walk. I don't have time to go get a massage. I don't have time to do that because I have this or I have that. And I just think that it's okay to take care of yourself.
I agree. It is okay to take care of yourself. And, it's like if you don't fill yourself up, you don't have anything to give. So there's got to be something in the tank, to keep you going so that you do have something to offer. I got a message over here too, and it says from Shell H, and she said that 5 years ago today, my dad passed, and I cried so much this morning, and I cried many days just thinking about him. And you had mentioned earlier about anniversary dates and triggers. Can you talk about triggers a little bit more?
Sure. So triggers are anything that happens that kind of evokes that emotion from you of sorrow, sadness, or whatever grief responses that you have, anger, sadness, anxiety. And ironically, I can relate to the triggers. Dates are a big trigger because it takes us back to, we have it etched in our memories. The dates, some people more than others, but people recognize, hey, this is the day that this person passed away. Today is my stepmother's birthday, and she passed away from cancer, and so ironically, today is a trigger day for me. And I knew last night, I started thinking about what I was going to post about her today and reflecting on her and, thinking about all the things that we've missed. And it is hard. A trigger could be a vacation spot that you went to every year with your parents, and now your parents are deceased. And so if you went to Ocean City, Maryland every year for vacation, somebody says you want to go to Ocean City, Maryland, there it is. Right? It could be a song. It could be a favorite song that you share with a person. It could be anything that brings up a memory of your loved one. Food, something that they cook very well, a song on the radio. It could be that you see someone who looks like them. I've had that happen where I literally saw the man and I said, he probably was like, why is this lady staring at me? He was walking down the street. I literally stopped my car and stared at him because I could not believe how much he looked like my father. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anybody look that much like my dad. Mm-hmm. And it's not known, but to see somebody look that close to your loved one, it kind of made me feel like, okay, for a moment, right? I just visualized that was my dad. And so it could be anything. So knowing what those are, I'm going back to the person who said that I work with children. Sometimes on those anniversary dates, it would be like, come to the counselor's office this morning. This is Pop-Pop's birthday, right? You started your morning off, or last night you talked about it. They might need to come to my office this morning for a check-in. I would write down specific things on my calendar that I knew was trigger dates. And some people will say they don't remember the dates. Some people do know them. Somebody said, how can we prepare for those dates? I think it's just, again, like the pre-planning. You can't really plan your emotional response, but you can plan. What do you want to do? If your dad's birthday is Christmas Eve, are you going to release balloons? Are you going to have a Christmas Eve conversation and share some reflections? Are you going to plan an event for that person, or are you going to have a quiet, right? And everybody might want to do something different. Sometimes in families, as someone said, we all grieve differently. There are people who don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then you have people who want to get together and reflect. And so sometimes you will find that, the people who want to talk about it can't get mad at the people who don't want to talk about it. And the people who, we can't be frustrated because people's grief looks different than ours. I think you just have to figure out who's ready to join you at whatever it is that you want to do. Family events are triggers too. Somebody said, when my stepdaughter had her first baby, I became a grandmother for the first time. I cried because I couldn't share it with my parents. So yes, family events, my wedding day. When my uncle had to walk me down the aisle, that's a moment that me and my dad joked about. And he was like, oh my God, I hope I'm not in a wheelchair when you get married, because it's taking a while, because I know you picky. We used to laugh about that. And so when I finally did get engaged, and I'm like, I can't believe that we talked about this, and my uncle has to walk me down the aisle. That was very a sad moment for me. So when you do have milestone years, children born, houses purchased, yes, weddings, those are all things that you can feel the person's absence, and you just have to know that you're going to feel it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go ahead. I think I caught all the questions. And then for, like you said, with Shell H, who said she cried so much this morning because today, 5 years ago today, like you said, just know you're going to feel it. Just cry, just get it out. And then just kind of begin to breathe again.
Yes. Breathe. And one of the things that I did not mention, just going back into grief, a lot of times, even in my training as a therapist, people really did focus a lot on the emotional side of grief, but there is a physical side of grief. So I just really wanted to reiterate that the whole stress experience of grief is what really makes it affect your body. It is a very stressful time. So unlike, like I said, moving, okay, I was stressed out for 2 months, 3 months, and then I moved into my home, and now we unpacked, and now I don't feel stressed about my house. Grief is an ongoing, extended grief stress experience that's intense for a long period of time. And so because of that, it wears on your body. So a lot of times people are surprised of the physical impact that grief can have. The headaches, the fatigue. People talk about the fatigue, and I'm like, you're not tired. People talk about being tired from pregnancy. I'm always like, listen, grief is like carrying octuplets. It is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
The crying, the chest pains. A lot of people end up in an emergency department thinking they're having a heart attack because grief is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Shortness of breath, panic attacks, stomach aches, body aches. And sometimes people don't realize it. And I know because I worked in the emergency department for 6 years, people would come in and they'd say, oh, your EKG looks fine. And then they finally get to talking and they talk about the fact that they lost 2 or 3 people and they've been stressed. And then the doctor would say, you know what, let me make a recommendation for you to talk to a mental health professional and a psychiatrist because you don't have any medical problems. This is all psychosomatic. This is all emotional things. So I tell people, people take off from work. You might have to take FMLA time. Trying to show back up to work with these 3 days off they give us. I'm always like, who's writing these policies? 3 days off, 5 days off. And you're like, which I was happy to hear Bank of America gives 21 days off for bereavement. I'm so impressed by that because
Wow.
I think that people don't understand the physical and the emotional toll that grief takes. If they did, I don't think our bereavement policies will have the numbers that's written. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, well, we see here Fly Lady Cat says she actually wasn't feeling well and went to see her doctor, and he recognized immediately that she was grieving, and he was also her parents' doctor, so it really opened her eyes and actually helped to improve her sleep. So it's good that he recognized that. And then I've got a note here from Shanta Kalk, and she says it's been 6 years since she lost her son. Herself and her other 2 children still have a hard time for the holidays.
Yes. It's, again, I'm just so glad that, we've talked about the fact that year 6, year 10, it becomes another year, but it does not erase. The memories never get erased. And we don't want to forget about the people that we love.
No.
But again, society kind of has us on a time, people think it's a time limit. And it really is not. And I just like to reiterate the physical aspect, which is why self-care is important, going back to what you said, because our bodies are under a lot of stress. Not eating, not drinking. Yes, especially when you're on a grief journey, you could not eat. People have all types of health problems. If you already have health problems, grief can elevate your blood pressure. It's a lot that's going on. So listening to your body, listening to your mind, again, being open to therapy, being open to talking to a mental health professional, being open to talking to people that you love and trust and telling them the truth about the fact that you're struggling, being honest with yourself about the fact that it's okay, that you're not okay. You don't have to pretend. And, grieving, you have to be intentional. People try to avoid it. People try to outwork it. People try to work 24 hours a day. And I always say you can't out hustle grief. No matter what you do, it's going to be waiting for you when you stop whatever it is that you're doing. So how can we prepare for these impending trigger dates? I think, I suggest journaling. I suggest thinking in advance, when like for me, for instance, I knew that Halloween was going to be a triggering date because that was my grandmother's birthday. So I thought about whether or not I was actually going to be able to go to one of my closest friends' bridal showings, to her dress fittings. And I decided that I was going to go, but that I was going to allow myself to be honest about this being a tough day at the right time. Mm-hmm. Right. And I could have tried to pretend that everything was great. Right. But in her moment, I let her have her moment. And then when we went to dinner afterwards and we celebrated, her experience, when people say, hey, you seem excited, but, are you tired? Are you sleepy? You don't seem like yourself. And that's when I revealed that today is, Halloween. This is my grandma's birthday. It's a little tough. But I pushed through because I wanted to show up for you. And I felt like I had the energy to do it. But when I came home, I went to bed early. I think that you just have to think about what do you want to do? And just, some people on here said that they start thinking about it early. I don't know that you can ever prepare. Sometimes you think that you're going to be okay and you wake up that day and you don't feel like it. Sometimes people think that they're not going to be okay and they're doing better than they expected. So I don't know that there's any real answer about how to prepare except to know that the date is coming. Let yourself grieve, whether it's a week before, a day before, the day of. and understand that it's a process, and don't judge yourself. And you might want to plan something. Like I said, if it's a birthday or a holiday or whatever, you might want to think about how you're going to celebrate that person. What ways are you going to honor their memory? Are you going to do a cancer walk for someone who you lost to cancer? Are you going to get creative and give a scholarship in your grandparents' name or your parents' name because they value education? I think as time goes, people start to get creative and do things that make them feel good about honoring their loved one. But those things take time. I don't know that anybody's doing that year one, but perhaps it could happen. But preparation is hard. As much as you can plan, but just write it in pencil. That's what I can say about writing the plan. Write it in pencil.
Okay. Right here, Sue says she had to work hard at remembering good times and how her relatives were during those times. She said stop focusing on the health struggles before they pass. So I think that's an important comment, but that also takes time because I was at the somewhere and I was talking about my mom to someone who was a friend of hers, and we were talking about those good times. And so it's like I'm getting to the point now where I can remember happier days and not just focus on those last days when she was ill. So, but it's been over a little over a year. So it comes gradually, doesn't come all at once. And then let's see, Nanny J says family events are triggers. Oh, I think we had that one already. When her stepdaughter, yeah, we did that one. Sorry. Let's see. A Better Life with Cat says it's good to just accept your grief and not fight it, even if it's normal.
Yes.
Okay.
To accept it and actually allow yourself to grieve. Because a lot of people, if they feel like they're going to cry, they're fighting the tears. If they feel like they're sad, they want to cut on Netflix and say, I'm not going to do this, right? We can find ways to distract ourselves. And all you do is delay the grief process. You have to let yourself go through the feelings. And some people feel like if I start crying, I'm never going to come back from this. And I'm always like, yeah, you will. You will. At some point, the tears will stop. But if you don't allow yourself to do it and avoid it, you just prolong the experience. And it's already a long, exhausting experience. So it's going to come out. And if you don't grieve, it's going to come out in other ways. Your personality, being irritable, agitated, like it's going to come out in other ways. And or drinking and using drugs and people, the pain is going to be catered to at some way. So a lot of times when people don't deal with their pain, they pick up unhealthy coping skills, and then they find themselves in other situations because the pain has driven them to do things. So I always say, if you're hurting, please deal with your grief in a healthy way, because there are many unhealthy ways to deal with grief.
And Melinda, plain and simple, is our Mimsy Whimsy. She's our resident poet. And she said she was trying to record a poem to post about grandmothers, and it triggered feelings. And she started bawling, but she finally got it done and posted. And it was her mom's birthday. So, yes, so many different things can cause you to trigger feelings. Okay. And then Linda says she's thankful to hear you say that being creative about how to express the grief takes time. She lost her sister in 2008, and only in the last couple of years does she feel like she's being productive. So that's
it does take time. In the beginning, you're just trying to figure out how to keep your head above water. So the creative genes and your focus is off, and grief brain is real. And as time goes, you begin to be able to tap into some of those creative ideas.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add?
My favorite slogan that I say at the end of everything, and it is grief is a journey, take hope. I have an organization called Grieving with Hope. I think you posted that already, but understanding that grief is a journey. It is a journey. And you have to take hope. You have to take patience. You have to be willing to be patient with yourself and other people who are going to say things that might be offensive or triggering. They don't mean any harm. They don't know what to say. But understand that it is something that is a long-term journey. It is not, this is a marathon. This is not the sprint in life. So I just encourage people to take hope on their grief journey, hence the name Grieving with Hope. I do host a monthly Zoom every month, the first Sunday of the month. I'm going to be hosting an annual conference that we've been doing since 2017. This year, we're going to do a Facebook Live because we want to be able for people to have watch parties. And this is going to be an hour and a half of talking about grief and loss. The whole world is grieving. With COVID, I think that a new light has been shown on grief. And so we want to be able to reach people globally and share. So I do hope that people can tune in. Please go to the Facebook page and like it, and then you will be able to see the broadcast live from the Facebook page. Janelle is my friend. She lost her sister tragically, and we've joined forces. Instead of us doing two separate things for grieving people, we decided to come together in 2018. So that is my partner, and she will be on the broadcast. Again, it will be Facebook Live, broadcasting live from the Grieving with Hope page, along with my a couple of other pages. But hopefully, if you like the page, you can tune in. It is free of cost. It's on Facebook Live, and if you're interested in a monthly Zoom, you can like the page, and we will give you information that you can text for the Zoom code. We try to keep the hackers out, so we have like a secret society. we don't post the Zoom link, but we will make sure that you get it when you join the page. We'll tell you how to get it. I also do grief trainings for therapists and other professionals, ministers, chaplains, anybody who's working with grieving people, to try to help the people who help grieving people be more, effective and knowledgeable on how to support grieving people. And this is the number where you can reach me at. And this was a great conversation. This Sunday, that's a good question, Mickey. I believe we're going to be on this Sunday. Janelle and I have to make a last minute decision because we're planning for the conference. But knowing us, we're going to say yes. Why not do two things on grief in November, especially because this is a triggering month. So we're going to make that decision by tomorrow. But more than likely, yes, because I never want to cut out an opportunity to support grieving people.
And then resources for grieving parents.
Yes, so there is a website called Peter's Place. It is a great resource. The website is www.petersplaceonline.org. And also my business page on TaylorMade has a lot of information for grief and other resources. I know we posted it before. There's also the New York Life organization that has a lot of information for grieving individuals. I'm big on that. It is a great resource. I go there a lot to get information. I like Peter's Place Online because it's a national resource center in the Delaware County area. I'm in the Pennsylvania tri-state region, and they do a lot of trainings. They have a lot of things that you can download. They have a lot of information for parents. I love when people have things to support parents on supporting their children. It's not just written for the professionals. It's actually written for parents. So I think that those are all, great places. And again, for children, please make sure that your school counselors and your children's teachers and their school family knows about the laws.
Let me see if I can bring up your page real quick too, since I've somehow or another, when I was posting the other sites, I forgot to put this one in. So let's see if I can get it up.
While you're doing it, I will say right now, I'm booked for my practice. I'm looking at bringing another therapist on because I do see clients personally. I'm able to see clients in the state of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I'm hoping to have a Maryland license soon. But right now, I'm licensed in 2 states permanently, 1 state temporarily. Hopefully, I'll become permanently licensed in New Jersey. So if you are watching this and you're a licensed clinical social worker and you're looking for a part-time job, please send me your resume to info@TaylorMadeBHS. I am actively recruiting because it's just time to expand. So I'm excited about being able to serve more people by adding a second therapist to my practice.
Okay. So, and then here's your website there. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back over here, and it is time for the lightning round. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions and you just answer just like that. First question, bath or shower? Anitra?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to the audience, and then I
No, no,
thought,
no, I'm talking to
no, no
you.
typing.
So, first
Shower.
question is bath or shower?
Shower.
Candlelight or moonlight?
Moonlight.
Puppies or kittens?
Puppies.
Boots or scarves?
Boots.
Skirts or jeans?
Jeans.
Lemonade or sweet tea?
Lemonade.
Corn muffins or cheddar bay biscuits?
Corn muffins.
Banana pudding or sweet potato pie?
Banana pudding for sure. With banana pudding with no bananas. We could talk about that later.
Oh, banana pudding with no bananas. Okay, then. All right, Anitra, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And just as a reminder, I want to make sure that everyone, I put the information for the upcoming grief conference in there, but I want to make sure that people see it so that they can check in if they want to. And they can connect with you. How?
So I can be reached at yes, that's the website, but my email is info@tailormadebhs.com.
Okay.
So that's my website, but my email, I can be reached at info@tailormadebhs.com.
At tailor-made, BHS, Behavioral Health Services.
Yep, solutions. Yep, solutions, behavioral health solutions. Yep, so info@tailormadebhs.com. Yep.
Okay.
It's a no L in between the Y, the two. So it's an extra L in there.
Okay.
TAYLOR.
At Taylor made BHS. It's really funny because when I try to type on screen, it's like I always get all kind of spelling
Yep, there
errors.
it is. That's
okay.
correct.
So they can reach you that way. All right, then. And then, so ladies and gents, what I want you to do is tell me, what is your takeaway? What are you going to do to make your holiday less stressful? And someone wants to know when the conference is again, and I believe that was November 20th.
Yes, November 20th, the Saturday before Thanksgiving. And we planned it that way because we know that the holidays are challenging. So we actually moved it from October. It's usually the second week in October. What Janelle and I decided, November 20th, we want to get right ahead of the holidays. So we strategically planned it for later.
All right, so here it is. November 20th, 12 to 1:30 live. Is that Eastern Standard Time?
Eastern Standard Time. And if you go to Facebook, to the page Grieving with Hope with Anitra and Janelle, and you like the page, you will be able to see the broadcast live from our page. So please like the page, and that's where you'll be able to access it.
And there is the time, because that's all those little bings. People are asking me, what are those times there? Okay, so let me get that off and see if I've missed anything else. So what are people going to do? They're going to plan ahead. Some people are going to stay at home with the hubby and other things. Kat says she's going to make her holidays before. She won't be afraid of feeling the grief. So that's good.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, won't be afraid. So again, Anitra, I want to thank you so much. And then I want to invite the viewers to be sure to check out my last video, Simplifying Holiday Decor, and then also reorganizing my prepper pantry. And I told you guys, don't tell Fly Lady Cat, because I had a big no in the video, and she watched the video and saw it. I was just like, oh no. Fly Lady Cat is my mentor. So there's that. But please check out my video, Simplifying Holiday Decor and Reorganizing My Prepper Pantry. And don't forget to also that as we begin to book for the first and second quarter of next year, let us know who you want us to bring on. Anitra, you were requested. So there you go there. And then be sure to check out our featured apron, which is this one. Wait, that one. Our holiday apron, pumpkin spice and everything.
I love it.
And we call it Autumn, and it's 10% off today. So be sure to visit us at www.aprondiva.com. In the meantime, this is Denise Jordan saying you're not done yet. Click on the link in the description box below I think I've got something in there. And check out another of our homemaking stories. Check out last week's show. Be sure and check out Anitra's upcoming grief conference. I tell you what, so many people need that.
Yes, and I hope that people are able to log in. And I'm seeing the comments. You're welcome. I was so happy. And this was a great idea. Thank you, Mickey and Miss Denise, for the invitation. This is a much needed conversation, and it's always great to be able to talk about grief. It's not every day that we get to do so.
And right, and it's not always that we get to do so in a safe environment. I mean,
Yes.
no one is being judgmental and saying, well, you should have got over it this or that time ago. That's the one thing I really like, Anitra, about this community that we've built here on YouTube, is that we are all very supportive of one another. And I just really appreciate you becoming a part of this community and helping us support our viewers. So I want to thank you very much. I promised you I would just keep you on for an hour. So I'm going to pop you off the stage and just stay in the waiting room for a second, and I'll be right there.
All
Okay.
right. Bye,
So
everybody.
I'm gonna, say goodbye.
Bye.
So, ladies and gents, oh my goodness, was she not amazing? Oh my goodness. I knew we needed to do this. But I had no idea how much. And I'm just so glad that you guys were here and that she was able to serve you guys and that I was able to help bring her to you. And Mickey Blue Skies, I want to thank you too, because you've helped me find several guests. And Anitra was one of the ones that Mickey Blue Sky said, this is who we need to get to address this topic. So thank you guys so much. So ladies, she was very good. I'm going to chat with you guys later. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.